have no idea what that was. Just kind of messing around and having some fun with elements of song. Welcome everybody to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. Thank you for joining me. For the past 4 weeks, we've been enjoying a little series here featuring this tune, Black Mountain Rag, and the elements of a song. 4 different parts that we're going to be looking at with the aid of some tablature that I'll be showing you here a little bit later on, but also to give you an idea of composing your own music and how to put some of these elements together, how to build them, where they come from, how to use them, and then how to put them all together. And this is the grand finale where we're going to put everything in perspective. We started off with the first element of song, which is melody. That's really the most important element because that's what people tend to remember, what they hum. And if it's got lyrics that combine with that melody, of course, that's what we sing. And then we've got harmony. So if you can think of melody moving along in sort of a horizontal direction, going upwards, coming downwards, but definitely moving along from left to right or right to left, depending on how you look at it, then harmony is right above it or below it sometimes, and it is moving and keeping pace along with the melody, but it's doing different things. It's creating additional bits of flavor and color, and it brings a lot of beauty into it. We have 2 different types of harmony that you're going to hear: consonance, which is really good sounding stuff, and dissonance, which is a little intense and a little crazy, but definitely a need for all of that in the spectrum of music. Third, after melody and harmony, we have chords. And basically, when you stack a bunch of notes together, you end up with chords. So melody is like the first element of a chord, then your harmony, and then we're going to add another note to that, and that's your chord. We talked last week about these chords, how to build them, how to play them on the dulcimer, and then how to incorporate your melody and harmony into that when you're creating arrangements. So the final piece of the puzzle, and it really has to do with that third note in the chord after the melody and the harmony, that's going to be your bass. Now typically the bass is just going to be a low note. It's going to be the foundation or the root of your chord. But the bass can be a lot more than that, as we all know. The bass can actually take on a melodic element. It can take the lead. It can be very prominent as opposed to being in the background. So what we're going to do with Black Mountain Rag today is take all these elements, and I'm going to use my looper pedal down here, which you can't see because I've got the camera set up specifically for the dulcimer. That's going to help me put all this stuff together to give you a very clear idea of how this all works. Of course, I'll talk a bit about how to play the bass when you're not just playing chord melody on the mountain dulcimer. And real quick, I haven't really mentioned chord melody during this 4 weeks. And chord melody style is a style of playing that's very, very simple on the mountain dulcimer. And basically it means you're moving chords around, but the melody always stands out and the other 2 notes support that melody. And one of the rules of chord melody style playing is to always make sure that the melody is the highest pitched note in the chord. So if you think about what we did with chords in our study of that, we have a root, then we have the 3rd and the 5th. Remember the traffic light? The root is the green light, the 3rd is the yellow light, and the 5th is the red light. So if you think about that melody, if you always keep your melody as the red light, no matter what you do, you'll be able to hear that melody even as you're playing chords. So that's something we'll get into here in a little bit. But I've said too much already before I get along to saying howdy to one of my patrons on Patreon, Linda Matoka. Linda, thank you very, very much for becoming a patron in October of 2020 and an annual pass holder at that. Thank you so much for taking the dive with me for the entire year. I hope you're enjoying yourself on the Patreon site and in the Patreon vault where all the goodies are stored. I appreciate you guys so much because for the past, I don't know how many weeks, I've been locked away in the studio here besides producing episodes of Dulcimerica and Mailbag Monday. I've really been focusing on this new album, The Beauty and the Terror, which is 5 years in the making. It's almost done, and I've just been able to sit and mix and write new parts and do all this fine tuning of things without having to run here or there or pack up for a gig and run out the door. You know, I have ADHD, and I can be very easily distracted. That's why I keep my windows closed when I'm working, because you can't get me looking out the window. Things don't get done. But I've been able to sit here and just focus on creating, and that is one of the most beautiful luxuries in the world these days. So thank you, Linda, and thank you to all of my patrons for making this possible. You guys truly are a part of my art, And really, I would not have been able to put this album together and complete it without your assistance and all the other things going on here in the studio. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you guys out there are curious about Patreon, you can visit this link below, patreon.com/BigFutch. Go past all the sign-up stuff that you'll see first off. Go down to the featured tag section. Click on Open House, and there you'll find all kinds of free stuff to download. If you like it, think about joining. It's only $5 a month or $50.40 for the annual pass, and that will save you 16%. That's 2 months free for all of my CDs, books, tablature, videos, and weekly exclusive content. So thank you, my patrons, and thank you, Linda. Love you guys. All right, we're going to jump right into it with a look at bass. So bass typically is just a support for your harmony and for your melody, for your chords. When you're playing a chord, you already have the bass in there, the lowest note that you hear. Here's a D major chord. And with this chord shape I'm playing, D is on the middle string, A is on the melody string, and F sharp is on the bass string. So in this case, we have a bit of an inversion happening, because typically if the chord is a D major chord, then the lowest note, the green light, is going to be a D. So in order to make that happen, I will play a 0-0-2 chord instead. That way we've got D on the bass. We've got the fifth, however, in the middle. That's A, and then F sharp is on the melody string. So typically if we were using what's called a root position chord, it would go D as the lowest note, F sharp as the note that's in the middle, the creamy center of the cookie, and then we've got A on the very, very top. But you would use perhaps a 0-0-2 if your melody note is an F sharp, but you still want to have a D major chord. And that's part of how chord melody works. And every time we change a chord shape, we're rearranging where those pitch locations are for each of those notes. You know, in the slant, the D isn't the bass note, it's actually the middle, it's the cream filling of the cookie. Why am I sticking with that analogy? With the extended slant, the D is actually the highest pitched note in the chord. F sharp is the cream filling of the cookie, and A is actually the lowest note. So with the different chord shapes, we're rearranging where those notes are located. And that's completely fine because that gives us a lot of additional voicings. The chords sound different every time we rearrange the three ingredients. So it comes in handy, and it's always good to know where all of your chord shapes are for all the different chords. So sometimes you might want to have the root note be the name of the chord, and sometimes you may want to make it be the third or make it be the fifth. So be thinking about that as you're moving things around. But generally speaking, your bass is just going to be the support for the chord, and it's going to be also the name of the chord that you're playing. So if you're playing chords like this, especially with the drone string open, a lot of the times that's already taken care of for you. So we've got this nice big D drone happening here. We also have A, the fifth of the chord, droning on the middle string. And all we're doing is we're changing what the melody is, and we're using, again, notes from the D major scale. But as soon as I change to G major, I can get up here and actually articulate that G major by putting my finger on the third fret on the bass string instead of doing it as a 0-1-3 like I've been doing for a couple of weeks now. So and that's a fine way to do it because D, the root of D major, will also work in the terms of a G major chord because D at that point is the fifth of a G major chord. It's part of the chord and it'll work just fine. But if you really want to articulate the root of the chord, G, then all we have to do is take this chord shape, this extended slant 0-1-3, and flip it over to a 3-1-0. Now what that does is it actually takes the bass note, G, and it's on the bass string, and now the D is on the melody string. So if I want to change that sound a little bit, I can do this. Now when what I'm doing here is I'm playing a 3-1-3 chord because our melody is G, but our chord is also G. And instead of having an open D chord, by doing this shape, 3-1-3, I've got a G note on the bass string, and I've got my melody that I can walk up from there. This 101 A major chord is what we call a root 5 chord. A root 5 chord has only 2 elements, even though it may have 3 notes. It has the root of the chord, the green light, and it has the 5th of the chord, the red light. There is no yellow light at all. So an A major is A, C sharp, and E. And a 101 chord features E on the bass string, E on the melody string, and A on the middle string. There is no C sharp anywhere. If we wanted to get a C sharp, we'd play maybe a 1-2-4 chord, A, C sharp, E, or a 4-2-1 chord, A, C sharp, E. Maybe even come up here and play 4-4-6.5 in an L shape with A, E, C sharp, or invert it. But we happen to be down here, and 101's a very, very easy way to play an A major chord when you're playing a fiddle tune. So why does the E work as a bass note? Well, because it's still part of the chord. And since we're not playing C sharp, we don't have to worry about that. But if you really felt like you needed to have the A as the root, I would recommend playing a 4-2-1 chord. But in this case, it works just fine because E is a part of the chord. It's the 5th. And it still works along with the drone and everything else. Mountain dulcimer is kind of weird like that, but it's also kind of joyfully easy like that as well. So it's up to you if you want to go full-throated with the chord or keep it very simple. So if you're just playing along with the drone, typically speaking, you don't have to think too much about the chords, and you don't have to think too much, you don't have to think too much about the bass, because it's already there. Whatever the lowest note you're playing out of these 3 string courses is your bass line. And if you're using rhythm and other things, it's going to sound like you've got a little bass player kind of hanging out with you. And that's the beauty and the magic also of the mountain dulcimer. So that's a very easy explanation on what the bass and what purpose the bass serves when we're playing the chord melody style, or whether we're playing in a drone melody style, just on the melody string and letting the other 2 strings simply drone on. The bass is there, don't even worry about it. So let's go ahead and play. Well, before we do this, let me go ahead and show you about articulating that bass a little bit more and giving it some personality, walking it around, and that kind of thing. There's a great old joke that says, how many bass players does it take to change a light bulb? Ready? The answer is 1. No, 4. No, 1. No, 5. No, 1. No, 4. What am I talking about there? I'm talking about scale degrees, or notes of the scale. Those numbers are referring to notes of the scale. So for example, let's say if we're in D major, 1 would be D, the first note of the scale, 4 would be G, and then 5 would be A. So 1, 4, 1, 5, what does that mean? That means that the bass player is going to be hitting the root and then hitting the 5th, in this case A. And this is why we're doing this. Think about D major for a second. What are the 3 ingredients of a D major chord? D, F sharp, and A, the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. What the bass player is doing at this point is supporting the top of the chord and the bottom of the chord. Not necessarily in that order. D, A, D, A. And that's really all there is to it. So if you know what is in the chord, play the root, play the 5th, and go back and forth. Sometimes you want to articulate that 3rd and do a little walk down or some other colorations, but generally speaking, you're playing the root and the 5th of the chord. So I also mentioned the 4, and why I mentioned the 4? Because if we're going to go to the 4 chord, which in this case is G major, we wanted to go ahead and play that 4, which is going to be G. So in order to keep this in a low range where it sounds really good, watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go D, A, D, A while we're playing the D major. when I do G major, think about, we got G as the bottom note and we've got D as the top note. So I'm going to play that G at the 3rd fret, and then I'm going to play open D and go down instead of going up. Another thing where I do that would be when we go to the A chord. Bottom note is A, top note is E. So as we've been playing D, as we know with Black Mountain Rag, it hangs out in D for a long time and then it goes to A very quickly and goes back to D. So watch what I do here. I'll be playing D and A, top and bottom of the D major chord. Da-dum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Right here we're going to change to an A major chord. Now when I go to A, I'm going to play the 4 again. I'm going to play the 4th fret to play A, and we're not there very long. So instead of going down and playing the bottom of the A chord, which is E, I'm actually going to go straight down to D. I only have time to play one bass note here. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Back to D. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, ba-da-ba-bum, bum, 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 ba-bum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, ba-da-ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Now when it comes time to go to the G major chord, bum, 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 bum. G going down to D. Bum, 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 bum. Back to this. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. And then here, bum, 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 bum. When we hit A, we're at A for a little while longer, so we can go ahead and play the E. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. So again, for every chord, you're playing basically bum, 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 bum. You're going the bottom note and you're going the top note of the chord, and sometimes maybe the middle. But you can have a little bit more fun than that and connect notes in between and do some of that famous walking bass line that was so popular in a lot of Johnny Cash tunes. Watch this. Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-dum bum ba-da-dee-dum bum 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 bum. So what I'm doing there is, we know my next target after D is going to be G, to go here. So I'm going to walk up those notes of the scale, D, E, F sharp, right into G. And then I walk right back down when I go back down to D. G, F sharp, E, back to D. And then you can either stay and do the A to E for your A major. You can even go A, E, A, G, F sharp, E, and walk it down that way. Or you can get a little funky and do something like something that Stephen Seifert would probably do, which is bum 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 ba da 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 bum bum ba dee da ba da bum bum ba dum bum bum bum. And that'll get you up to your D. That's A, B, C natural, C sharp, and D. That's kind of a fun little bluesy walk up that you can do, and then come on back down to your D. So once again, the bass player can get inventive and not just hold down the bass note of every single chord. You can play a pendulum bass, rocking back and forth. You can just play quarter notes. And you can also include what are called passing tones, notes that are not in the chord but will get you from one chord to another. So it's all up to you how easy, how simple, or how complex and lyrical and melodical you want to make it. So, having talked there about the bass, real quickly, let's talk about how you can incorporate that into your own original music. Again, just keep those things in mind. Either keep it simple and have that bass line there. Maybe you're writing a part that's for multiple dulcimers, because there's only so much of that stuff you can do while you're trying to hold down the melody and do the chords and all that. So you'll see that I'm using the looper pedal when I actually bring in some of that fancier stuff with the bass. But if you're planning on playing it with other people or playing the bass part yourself, remember that we want to be able to support the chord. So we need to largely stay simple and stay within the chord itself, playing the root note of the chord and the fifth note of the chord. But we can also take a little trip and walk and connect between chords, and there we'll use passing tones or notes, and those notes are going to come from the scale, the associated scale. And you can also go outside if you want to and use notes that are not in the scale for some fun stuff, like we did with our flat 7th there with our C. You can also create bass lines that are very heavily melodic and make them the hook of the tune that you're doing. One of the songs that's going to be on the next album is called Put You Down, and the bass line goes like this. Obviously, that's a lot more than just 1/4, 1/5, but that just goes to show you that you can just expand your imagination and do whatever you like to with any of the elements, whether it be melody, harmony, your simple chords, or your bass. As long as it all fits together in the grand scheme of things, and we're thinking about music theory, which does allow for a lot of chord substitutions, borrowed chords, accidentals, things that would make the music a lot more complex and a lot more interesting. There is really no limit to the things that you can do when you're writing and arranging your own music. So I hope that makes sense. So for our grand finale, I'm going to put all of this together and play one element at a time using the looper pedal here and show you how it would sound to have a small dulcimer ensemble with you. And then I want you to make sure that you are taking a look at the video description here on YouTube, because I have included for you all of the parts for a version of Black Mountain Rag that includes your melody, your chords, which are going to be chops. We talked about chops a little bit, and also your bass line as well, including the Johnny Cash Walk Down and the Steven Seifert Walk Up. Just to go over chops again real quick, chops are playing chords as accompaniment in a rhythmic fashion. So typically we're going to be playing these chops on beats 2 and 4 and not playing anything on 1 and 3. And it's a great way to provide rhythm accompaniment at the same time we're providing chordal support for your melody and for your harmonies. So without any further ado, here's the grand finale, Black Mountain Rag in 4 parts. my goodness. Well, that and one little nugget is basically the elements of song. We start with melody, we incorporate harmony on our way to developing chords, and then part of a chord and something we can take a little step further would be the bass. These four parts all put together can make any piece of music a lot of fun, and writing your own music rewarding and challenging and fulfilling, and so many other wonderful positive things. I hope you have enjoyed this series on elements of song. Thank you very, very much for joining in with me. I hope you will take this and use it with other pieces of music as well, working with your Dulcimer groups as we begin to filter out back into the world face to face and hanging out with each other. It's great to play as an ensemble, and I hope that many of you will explore this avenue and have some fun with it. Coming up next is a series I have no idea, but a lot of people, and I have mentioned this before, want to learn more about playing the bass. So that'll be coming up. But if you have any recommendations or suggestions or requests for things for me to teach here on Dulcimerica, drop me a line at bingfutch@yahoo.com. And also, come find me over at patreon.com/bingfutch if you'd like to see even more of this stuff, like Dulcimerica Deluxe, a very, very special series that's a spin-off of Dulcimerica. It includes study on one subject, one topic that we drill down deep and get to the heart of it. There's a lot more where that came from, and we hope you'll join us in our lovely community over at Patreon. Thanks again, everybody. Be safe, play well, and we'll see you next week.